What's up, bookworms? So, a few days ago, I finished A Game of Thrones, the first book in a Song of Ice and Fire series by George R. R. Martin. And after taking a few days to think about it, I've decided to give A Game of Thrones 4.5 stars. Now, I did this book as a combination of the physical book, the ebook, and the audiobook. And I absolutely love the audiobook for A Game of Thrones. I love the way Roy Dotrice narrates this book and how he does all the different voices for each character. And I believe he won an award for doing all the different voices. It was like 224 different characters that he voiced in a Game of Thrones series. And I love listening to him as he narrates this book. He does a really good job of bringing these characters to life and bringing this story to life. And so I highly recommend listening to the audiobook if you decide to jump into a Game of Thrones. Now, this book was really, really good overall, but I was very conflicted with this book because of all the things that take place in Daenerys' chapter, especially because she's just so young in this book. She's 12, 13, 14 years old whenever some of these events take place. And whenever she gets raped, whenever she gets married to Khal Drogo, and her scenes or her chapters in this book are very, very descriptive and very, very disturbing, but they're also the most powerful chapters in this book, especially with her first and second chapters. She's 13 years old and she's about to be given to Khal Drogo, and it's their wedding night, and he's about to take her sexually. And that chapter is very descriptive, but it's very powerful because you get her perspective and how she's holding back tears and how she's screaming no on the inside, but she's slowly surrendering herself to this king so that they can acquire his army and she can go and fight back and take her back her homeland. And so this book, I understand why this book was so controversial when it came out and why the show was so controversial and why they portrayed Daenerys as so much older in the show just because of how young she is in the book. Now, I absolutely love this book, and I immediately dove into book two in this series, A Clash of Kings. And like I said, I've been talking to everybody about this book throughout this last week just because of how not only disturbing this book is, but how good it is. And George R. R. Martin did a really good job of writing this book. And I love the dialogue and the banter. And Tyrion so far in this book has been my favorite character. And I love his chapters, and I look forward to Tyrion's chapters the most. But Daenerys' chapters are the ones that are the most disturbing and the most powerful, and the chapters I look forward to the least because I just assume something disgusting is going to happen to her, and I'm just going to have to accept it. But I highly, highly recommend the Game of Thrones, especially if you guys love epic fantasy and fantasy fiction. You guys don't know what you're missing out on. If you can stomach some of the things that take place in this book and you can look past some of that stuff, such as Daenerys' age, I promise you, you guys are going to love this book. It's really, really good. So I got A Game of Thrones, 4.5 stars. In the meantime, bookworms, let's get out there and carpe some Librum.